What's going on, guys? It's Danny Do It All, and today I'm going to be working on my wife's 2008 Ford Taurus X. We're going to be changing out the serpentine belt on it as well as the tensioner. Alright, so one of the reasons that I'm actually changing out the serpentine belt is because it has started squeaking a lot, as well as it has probably about 120,000 miles on it, and I'm just doing preventative maintenance on it as well as changing out the tensioner. Alright, so the Ford Taurus X uses Ford's 3.5 liter Duratec engine, and our serpentine belt is going to be here on the side. It's kind of a tight fit in here. Alright, so before we remove the belt, some vehicles will have a label located underneath the hood somewhere to show you the diagram of the serpentine belt or underneath the hood. This Taurus X does not, so what I've done is I've drawn up what the belt looks like around the different pulleys. And so what we have is, here's the crankshaft, the tensioner, the alternator pulley, and the AC compressor. And basically I just did a simple drawing on the way that the belt is routed around those pulleys, just so that it's easier when I go to put the new belt back on. Alright, so you're going to insert a 3/8 drive ratchet or serpentine belt tool, and you're going to turn the tensioner to the right towards the front of the vehicle. And then I'm just going to simply slide the belt off the top of the pulley of the alternator, and then I'm going to release the tension on the tensioner. Alright, and now the belt is off. Alright, so I just grabbed a palm tree branch to kind of hold this AC line out of the way so that I have better access to our tensioner right there. We're going to need an 8mm and a ratchet with a long handle so that it's easier to work in there. Alright, so to remove this tensioner, I have a 8mm long socket and a long handle ratchet. I'm just going to go ahead and loosen up these 8mm bolts that are holding it onto the block. Alright, that's the second bolt, and the third one is on the left hand side of the tensioner. Now that they're loose, if you can, try to reach down and unscrew them by hand. Alright, that's one. Alright, so you reach down here with your left hand, standing at the front of the vehicle, to kind of reach these bolts. And this is much easier if you have smaller hands. Two, and here's the third one on top, and I'm just going to carefully pull the tensioner out, slide it up along the block and out of the way. Alright, once your tensioner is out of the way, you can just reach down and grab your belt out of there and kind of simply wiggle it out from underneath any pulleys, and that belt is out. And we're going to get ready to install the new belt right over here. A couple things I want to point out as we're working on this car is careful right here on these edges of this plastic. They're pretty sharp here on the Taurus X. They can cut your arm if you're not careful. And let's take a look at this old belt. Alright guys, so this is our old tensioner that we removed off the vehicle. I believe that it is the original tensioner from factory. It's got about 175,000 miles on it. The pulley is still quiet, but I am changing it out just as preventative maintenance to make sure that it doesn't break down on me. We do take a lot of road trips with this car, and I just want to make sure that take good care of it. It's also a daily driver. And this is the old belt that we removed off of the car. As you can see, it's cracked all along it, and it definitely is very thin inside of the grooves. There isn't much left there between the grooves and the top of the belt. I'm not sure if this is the original belt. Like I said, the car does have 175,000 miles on it, and this belt did start squeaking, and it is in bad shape. Alright, with engine components, I do like to use the original manufacturer's equipment. This is the new tensioner that we have, and I matched it up with our old one, and it is an exact match on there. Like I said, I believe the old one was the original, and it lasted 175,000 miles, and it was still going pretty strong. Like I said, I just wanted to make sure that do replace it with a new one just so that we don't break down. Alright, getting ready to put the new tensioner back on, and before we do so, I'm going to go ahead and put a little bit of blue thread locker on each of these bolts just to make sure that they don't come out. Alright, so installation is just simply the reverse of what we just did. So carefully slide your tensioner back into place. Like that. And it does get a little tricky doing this with one hand. Make sure you line it up well and thread it in by hand as much as possible to make sure you don't cross thread it. Once you've tightened up as much as you can by hand, go ahead and grab your ratchet and your 8mm, and you can tighten them down. Alright, once you've tightened it down by hand, grab your 8mm and reach down in here so that you can tighten these up. And these don't have to be tightened down too tight. We just want to make sure we don't mess up the block. And what I'll do is I'll leave the torque specs down in the description below. To put this new belt in, it might take you a little bit of time to kind of route it around all the pulleys. So, could be frustrating at times, so just take your time with it. Especially because it's a new belt. It's not as pliable as the old belt. Put it around the crank and the compressor first, and then route it underneath the tensioner pulley. And then the last step we'll do is we'll put it on top of the alternator pulley. Again, just take your time with this to make sure that you do have the belt on the right way. Alright, once you have your belt in position as best as you can, wrapped around all the other pulleys except the alternator, go ahead and get your 3/8 ratchet on there. You're going to go ahead and again pull towards the front of the car, and then you're going to reach down and carefully pull the belt up above the alternator pulley, and making sure that it's around all the other pulleys and underneath the tensioner. Alright, once it's in place, go ahead and gently release pressure off the tensioner. And we're going to go ahead and just visually inspect the belt to make sure that it is on all the pulleys. Alright, there is the belt wrapped around all the pulleys and in place. I'm just making sure that everything looks good. And that is all there is to replacing the belt and tensioner. Alright, so the last thing to do on this is to go ahead and start up the engine and make sure that the belt is on there right, and make sure that we did a good job. Alright guys, there it is. Simple 20 to 30 minute DIY job that you can do in your driveway and save you a ton of money. This engine is in a lot of different Ford vehicles. Alright guys, if you found this video helpful, please consider giving me a thumbs up and subscribe to the channel. I will have more videos coming up on the Ford Taurus X, as well as my Ford Fusion that I have, so stay tuned.